People say love can heal you, but for me, love was the reason I broke. I remember whispering those words to myself one lonely evening, staring at the quiet apartment that once echoed with laughter. The walls still carried faint memories, his voice, his smile, the sound of shared dreams that never really belonged to me. Back then, I believed in fairy tales. I believed that if you loved someone enough, they would never hurt you. But love, as I learned, can be the most dangerous illusion of all. My name is Emily, and I was 28 when I met Robert. I had built a comfortable life for myself, an interior designer known for my work in boutique homes around the city. My friends often said I had everything: success, stability, grace, but they didn't know how quiet my nights were, how often I sat by the window, sipping cold tea and wondering why, despite everything I had, I felt so empty inside. It was at a charity event that my story with Robert began. I wasn't looking for love. I barely even wanted to attend. But fate has a strange way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. He approached me while I was looking at the paintings on display, tall, confident, with a smile that seemed to hold warmth and curiosity. He asked something simple: "Do you believe art should make you feel peace or pain?" I laughed softly, caught off guard by his question. "Both," I replied. "Peace reminds us we're alive. Pain reminds us we're human." His eyes lingered on me a moment longer than expected. "Then you must be very human," he said with a playful smirk. That was Robert, charming, effortlessly engaging, someone who could make silence feel like music. We talked for hours that night. He told me he ran a small startup, struggling but ambitious. He spoke of his dreams, his childhood, his failures, and his hopes. I listened, fascinated by how easily he made vulnerability sound like strength. Days turned into weeks, and soon he was everywhere, calling in the mornings, texting during work, waiting outside my office with coffee. His presence filled the void I had quietly carried for years. I remember our first coffee date vividly. The way he reached across the table, brushed my hand, and said, "You make me want to be better." And I believed him. We spent weekends driving out of the city, talking about the future, the home we'd build, the places we'd travel, the life we'd create. He never hesitated to dream big, even when his wallet didn't match his words. Sometimes he'd sigh, mentioning how business wasn't going well. I'd reassure him with quiet confidence, "You'll figure it out, Robert, you always do." And then I'd pay for dinner, for gas, for little things that slowly became big things. It didn't bother me. I was in love, and love, I thought, was about helping each other through storms. There were nights when he'd hold me close and whisper, "I don't deserve you." I'd smile, brushing his hair away, replying, "Maybe that's what love is, giving each other more than we deserve." Looking back, I realized those words were my first mistake. After just 6 months of dating, Robert proposed. It wasn't planned, or maybe it was. We were walking by the lake where we often sat during sunsets, and he suddenly stopped, took my hand, and said, "Emily, I can't imagine my life without you. You make everything make sense." His eyes were wet, his voice trembling just enough to feel real. He didn't have a ring. He said he wanted me to choose it later because I deserved the best. But in that moment, it didn't matter. My heart raced, my eyes blurred, and I said yes. It felt perfect. It felt like fate had finally rewarded me for waiting so long. When I told my best friend Sarah, she hesitated. "Emily," she said carefully, "you've known him for 6 months. Are you sure?" I laughed, brushing it off. "When you know, you know." But Sarah didn't smile. She just looked at me with quiet concern. "You're in love, Emily. But is he?" Her question lingered in my mind longer than I wanted to admit. For a brief moment, I felt a strange chill in my chest, a whisper of doubt that I quickly buried beneath the warmth of my excitement. I told myself that she was wrong, that Robert loved me as deeply as I loved him. As the wedding preparations began, Robert's behavior subtly changed. He became busier, less attentive, often distracted. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Just trying to make our future perfect." And I believed him again. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my room, scrolling through our pictures. Each smile, each moment, felt so genuine that I couldn't imagine any of it being false. I whispered to myself, "This is real. It has to be." But deep down beneath the layers of love, trust, and denial, a quiet voice inside me trembled with unease. It wasn't fear of losing him. It was fear of losing myself in him. Still, I silenced that voice. I chose love over logic, Emotion over reason. Because when you've been lonely long enough, even a shadow of affection can feel like sunlight. And Robert knew exactly how to be the light I needed. That was the beginning of our fairy tale, one that sparkled beautifully from the outside but was already cracking within. I didn't know then that the love I thought would save me was only waiting to destroy me. But I would learn. Because the thing about fairy tales is, they always end, and mine was never real to begin with. Our wedding was everything I had dreamed of, beautiful, elegant, the kind of day that makes strangers smile and friends whisper, they're perfect together. The hall shimmered with golden lights, the tables draped in ivory silk. I wore a lace gown that felt almost too perfect, like something borrowed from a fantasy. Robert looked handsome in his tailored suit, charming everyone with his confident grin. As the photographer asked us to pose, he leaned close and whispered, "Smile, Mrs. Carter. This is the beginning of forever." I smiled. I wanted to believe him. I wanted forever to mean something more than just a word spoken under soft music and applause. From the outside, everything looked flawless. Guests praised our chemistry. My parents beamed with pride. But even that night, beneath the laughter and the champagne, I sensed a distance, a quiet gap between us that I couldn't name. After the honeymoon, the fairy tales started to dim. Robert was still kind, still charming, but there was a change in his tone, a subtle shift that only I noticed. He began making decisions without asking me small things at first, like how to arrange the furniture or which friends to invite over. "Don't worry about these things," he'd say with a smile. "You already handle so much at work. Let me take care of us." It sounded loving, even protective. I told myself that's what good husbands do. They lead, they manage, they protect. Soon, he started managing our finances too. "We should merge accounts," he said one morning over breakfast, casually spreading jam on toast. "We're a team now. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours." It made sense, or at least it sounded like it did. I trusted him, so I agreed. At first, things were fine, but then, the luxury purchases began. A new car, a set of gold watches, lavish dinners. He called them investments in our lifestyle. When I hesitated, he'd laugh lightly, wrapping his arm around me. "Emily, you work too hard to worry about money. Enjoy what you've earned, what we've earned." But we always felt more like me. I kept quiet, convincing myself that he deserved it. He was, after all, the man who'd promised to build a life with me, and I wanted that life to work. The first time I noticed how alone I was came one Friday evening. I was setting the table for dinner, excited because it had been a week since we'd eaten together properly. I made his favorite meal, even lit candles, but when he walked in, he barely looked at the food. His phone buzzed, and his expression changed. "Sorry, Em. Something came up with work. I'll eat later." He left before I could even respond. I sat at that table for an hour, staring at two untouched plates, the candles slowly melting into silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. He came home past midnight, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, his voice was calm, unbothered. "You're imagining things. Don't make something out of nothing." And I believed him because I wanted to, because I was terrified of what it meant if I didn't. Weeks passed like that. His late-night calls grew frequent. He began traveling more for business. Each time I asked for details, he'd respond with the same dismissive affection. "Emily, trust me, not everything needs an explanation." I began doubting myself. Maybe I was maybe marriage wasn't supposed to be a constant fairy tale. Maybe love meant patience, even when it hurt. I started working harder, both at home and in my studio. I redecorated our house, planned surprises, wrote him small love notes I'd slip into his briefcase. Sometimes, he'd find them and text me a heart emoji. Other times, he didn't mention them at all, but I clung to those small moments like lifelines, convincing myself that deep down, he still cared. Friends stopped visiting as much. "Robert always had reasons. We need privacy. They're jealous. You should focus on us." Slowly, I found myself more isolated than ever. Sarah called one night, her voice worried. "You don't sound like yourself, Em. Are you okay?" I looked around the empty living room, the quiet pressing against me. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just busy." After the call, I stared at my reflection in the window, the faint outline of a woman who had once been strong, now reduced to waiting for someone who didn't even notice her absence. One night, as Robert slept beside me, his phone lit up again. My heart raced, my hand trembling as I reached for it. But then, I froze. I couldn't do it. I didn't want to see what my heart already knew. Instead, I turned away, pressing my face into the pillow to muffle the sob that escaped in the darkness. My thoughts whispered cruelly, maybe he's tired, maybe he's stressed, maybe this is how marriage works. But deep down, another voice, the one I had silenced long ago, whispered, no, Emily, this isn't love, this is control. Still, I stayed. I told myself it was just a phase, that every couple goes through rough patches, but each passing day felt heavier. I began losing my laughter, my appetite, my spark. My designs lost their color, my art lost its emotion. Even my reflection felt like a stranger. He never yelled, never raised his voice. His cruelty was quiet, polite, almost invisible to anyone outside. That was the worst part. I couldn't even name it. When he'd walk into a room full of people, he'd hold my hand, smile for the cameras, and call me his everything. People would say, "You two are perfect." And I would smile, the kind of smile that hides tears behind practiced grace. Inside, I was slowly unraveling. Every night, when the lights went out, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe he'll look at me like he used to. But tomorrow never changed, and neither did he. From the outside, our marriage gleamed a picture of success, beauty, and love. But behind the walls, there lived a silence that screamed louder than any fight ever could. I was trapped in a life that looked perfect to everyone else, and hollow to me. And though I didn't know it then, that emptiness was only the beginning of the storm that was about to break. It was a Thursday morning when my world quietly began to fall apart. The sun was shining through the curtains, and I was making coffee when my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. The bank. Mrs. Carter. The woman said politely, "We're just confirming a series of large withdrawals made from your joint account. We noticed some unusual activity, over $70,000 in the past few weeks." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice trembling. "My husband handles most of that. Could you tell me where the transfers went?" "I'm sorry, ma'am," she replied gently. "They appear to be personal transactions. We just wanted to ensure they were authorized." When the call ended, I stood in the kitchen, the coffee cooling in my hands. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I replayed every word. $70,000. I had trusted Robert completely. How could this happen without him telling me? When he returned that evening, I waited at the dining table, my palms pressed together to stop them from shaking. He walked in casually, kissed my cheek, and poured himself a drink like nothing was wrong. "Robert," I said quietly, "I got a call from the bank today." He didn't even flinch. "Yeah, they said there were large withdrawals from our account. I don't remember authorizing them." He took a sip, then smiled, calm, composed. "Oh, that. I'm investing for our future, Emily. A new business opportunity came up, and I didn't want to worry you until it was final." My stomach twisted. "You could have told me." "I know," he said smoothly, setting the glass down, "but you've been stressed lately. I just wanted to handle it myself." His tone was so steady, so convincing, that for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But a part of me, the part that had been quietly watching, waiting, hurting, knew better. That night, when he turned away to sleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. His explanation didn't fit the man I once knew. It didn't fit the way he'd been distant, distracted, cold. Something inside me whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. 2 days later, I found it. He had left his phone on the coffee table before heading to the shower. I wasn't the kind of woman who snooped. At least, I hadn't been. But pain makes you brave in strange ways. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. There it was, dozens of messages from a woman named Clara. Her profile picture showed her smiling, young, beautiful, carefree. Their conversation was filled with flirtation, emojis, and late-night confessions. "Clara, I miss you already." Did she suspect anything? Robert? Not a thing. She trusts me too much. "Clara, you're wicked. Robert, only for you." The air left my lungs. My vision blurred as I scrolled through their conversations. Hotel bookings, dinner plans, promises of a future together. My heart cracked with every word. I dropped the phone, pressing my shaking hands over my face. My chest felt hollow, my breath coming in short gasps. I wanted to scream, to run, to unhear every word I had just read, but all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by disbelief. Every memory flashed before me. His sudden late-night calls, his secretive business trips, the new clothes, the expensive watch he said was a gift from a client. I had ignored it all. I had wanted to believe so badly that he was still the man I fell in love with. Tears rolled down my face as I whispered, "How long have you been lying to me?" When Robert walked out of the shower, towel over his shoulders, he saw the phone on the floor and the look on my face. He froze. For a second, there was guilt, then it was gone, replaced by indifference. "You went through my phone," he said coldly. I stood up, trembling. "Don't you dare turn this on me. Who is Clara? How long has this been going on?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he poured himself another drink, took a slow sip, and said, "You don't need to make this dramatic, Emily. Dramatic. You've been cheating on me, Robert. You took my money, my trust, and you call me dramatic." He sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You gave me everything I needed, Emily, but now, I need more than your money." His words cut through me like glass. "More than my money," I whispered, voice breaking. "Was that all I was to you?" He didn't even look at me. "You were comfortable, predictable. You made life easy. But people change. People don't destroy others to change," I said, tears streaming down my face. He turned to me, emotionless. "Maybe not everyone is built for forever, Emily. Some of us just know when it's time to move on." And just like that, he walked out. No apology, no guilt. He packed a small bag and left that night, leaving behind silence the kind that filled every corner of the house. I remember sitting at the dining table after he left. I had set it earlier, 2 plates, candles, his favorite meal. I hadn't even realized I was still waiting for him when he came home. Now, the food sat untouched, the candles flickering weakly as tears fell into my lap. The room felt enormous, like the walls were swallowing me whole. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, counting down the moments of a life that no longer existed. I wanted to call someone, to scream, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was whisper to the empty chair across from me, "Why wasn't I enough?" That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through every room, touching the things we'd built together, the couch we picked out, the photographs we'd framed, the promises we once made. All of it felt tainted, hollow. He didn't just take my money, he took my faith and love. And as the morning light crept in through the window, I realized something devastating. I wasn't mourning the loss of him. I was mourning the woman I used to be before him, the woman who believed love was safe, the woman who thought forever meant something. That woman was gone, and in her place stood someone broken, someone who had loved deeply and been destroyed quietly. The house was silent when I finally sat down again, staring at the cold, uneaten food. The candles had burned out. The air was still. Robert had left, but the ache he left behind, that would take much longer to go. The house felt different after Robert left, not just empty, but hollow, as if every wall carried an echo of betrayal. The once cheerful living room, filled with flowers and laughter, now looked like a stranger's home. The framed wedding photos still hung on the walls, a cruel reminder of promises that never meant anything. Every morning, Emily woke up to silence. No footsteps, no clinking of coffee mugs, no voice saying, "Good morning, darling." Just the sound of the clock ticking, each second cutting into her heart. Bills began to pile up on the kitchen counter. Electricity, mortgage, insurance, all things Robert had promised to handle. But when Emily opened the envelopes, she realized how deep his lies went. He hadn't paid a single one. Worse, he had withdrawn more money from her accounts before leaving. The calls from the bank kept coming, each one more stressful than the last. Her savings were gone. Her credit was ruined. The business she once ran so proudly now stood on the brink of collapse. She had trusted him with her finances, and he had used her name for shady deals. When she went out to run errands, she could feel people's eyes on her. The neighbors whispered, pretending not to. She could almost hear their words. Poor Emily. He used her money and left. Even her friends began to drift away, unsure of what to say. Pity, she could handle, but the silent judgment, that was unbearable. Sometimes, she sat by the window at night, watching couples walk hand in hand. She'd wonder, do they really love each other, or is one of them pretending to? She'd press her forehead against the cold glass, tears streaming down her face, and whisper, "Why wasn't I enough?" Her parents tried to help, but they didn't understand. Her mother's voice, though filled with love, carried the weight of old-fashioned wisdom. "You have to move on, Emily. Life doesn't stop for a man." But how do you move on when the betrayal isn't just in your heart, it's in your identity? Robert hadn't just left her. He had taken away her confidence, her trust, her sense of self. Dashworth. Nights were the hardest. She'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering his laugh, the one that once made her feel safe. She'd remember the way he'd hold her hand in public, the fake affection that now made her sick. Sometimes, she'd reach for the pillow next to her, then stop, realizing it was empty. The ache in her chest would tighten, and she'd curl into herself, whispering, "You broke me, Robert, but I'm still here." Days turned into weeks. The house remained quiet, the shadows longer, but Emily began writing again, journaling. At first, her therapist had told her to pour her pain into words. At first it felt forced. Each sentence came out jagged, soaked in tears. But slowly, her pen began to flow freely. "I loved a man who loved only money. I gave my heart to someone who sold it for comfort. He left, but maybe he set me free." Those words became her healing, not because they erased the pain, but because they gave it meaning. One day, while going through old drawers, she found their wedding invitation. Gold lettering, tied with a red ribbon. She held it for a long time, then quietly tore it in half, not in anger but in peace. It was the first time she felt a strange relief, a realization. She didn't have to hate him to move on. She just had to stop letting his shadow define her. She started going for walks in the park again. At first, she walked with her head down, afraid someone might recognize her. But with time, she began to lift her gaze to notice the sunlight filtering through trees, the sound of birds, the small laughter of children playing nearby. Life was still moving, and slowly, she began to move with it. Every day, she reminded herself, "He didn't love me, but that doesn't mean I'm unlovable." She started focusing on her business again, rebuilding from scratch. The same determination that once made her successful began to return, now fueled by self-respect, not validation. Some nights, she still cried. Healing wasn't linear, but even in those tears, there was strength. She was learning that heartbreak didn't destroy her, it revealed her. The woman she once was, naive, trusting, eager to please, was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, wiser, and infinitely stronger. One evening, she stood on her balcony, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in orange and gold, and for the first time in months, she felt peace. She whispered to herself, "I may have lost a man who never loved me, but I found the woman who always should have." The camera would linger on her face, a soft, tired smile, a reflection of pain turned into strength. The background music swells gently, not sad, not happy, just real, because that's what healing feels like. Not an ending, but a quiet beginning. The first day Emily decided to work again, it felt like learning to breathe after drowning. Her hands trembled as she opened her laptop, the same one that once held Robert's financial plans, their fake dreams. Now, it was hers alone. No shared passwords, no controlling voice behind her shoulder. Just Emily, and her silence turning into strength. At first, everything felt foreign. The world, her reflection, even her own name on professional emails. But with every passing day, she forced herself to take one small step forward. Some days, it was answering a single client. Some days, just getting out of bed was victory enough. The pain hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore, just a quiet ache that pushed her to do better, to be better. Weeks later, Emily made the hardest decision of all. She sold the house, the same house where she once believed in forever. Every corner of it carried memories, laughter that wasn't real, promises that turned into lies. As she packed her belongings, she touched the walls gently, whispering, "You don't own me anymore." The day she handed over the keys, she didn't cry. She simply stood on the porch one last time, watching the wind move through the empty rooms. It was like closing a chapter of a book she never wanted to read again. Her new apartment was small, just one bedroom, one window, one life. But it was hers. No luxury furniture, no marble counters, only simplicity and peace. She began decorating it slowly, one piece at a time. A plant near the window, a candle on the table, a framed quote that read, "You are enough." There were nights when loneliness crept in, when silence felt heavy. But even in that silence, there was freedom. No footsteps, she feared. No lies to decode. No love to beg for. Just Emily learning to exist without permission. She began handling her finances again. Something Robert had always controlled. At first, she was terrified. Every number reminded her of what she'd lost. But she learned, little by little. She took online courses, met with advisors, and promised herself she would never depend on anyone for her stability again. Independence became her quiet rebellion. Days turned into months. Her business began to grow again, not as fast as before, but steady and honest. Clients returned, drawn to her sincerity and quiet professionalism. Her inbox filled with appreciation, not manipulation. The video montage here would show glimpses Emily typing at her desk late at night, walking through a park in the morning light, sharing coffee with new friends, and smiling, genuinely, softly, without fear. She had started volunteering at a women's support group to helping others heal from heartbreak and betrayal. Listening to their stories made her realize she wasn't alone. Pain, when shared, loses some of its power. One afternoon, while sitting by her window, Emily wrote in her journal, "I used to think I needed someone to complete me, but now I know I was whole all along. I just forgot to see it." The background music here would shift, soft piano replaced by hopeful strings, signaling rebirth. Then, one morning, she received unexpected news. An old acquaintance sent her a message. "Did you hear about Robert? He went bankrupt. Clara left him." Emily froze for a moment, staring at the screen. Her heart didn't race. Her breath didn't hitch. She felt nothing. No revenge, no satisfaction, just peace. Because she no longer needed his downfall to feel whole. She had already won by surviving him. That evening, she decided to visit the cafe where she and Robert had first met years ago. It looked almost the same: warm lights, soft music, the faint smell of coffee and cinnamon. She sat at the same corner table where once he'd smiled and said, "You're different, Emily." Now, she smiled to herself, not because of the memory, but because she finally understood. She was different. Different from the woman who once tolerated lies. Different from the woman who thought love meant sacrifice. Different from the woman who believed her worth depended on someone else's affection. She took out her phone and began recording a short voice memo, not to send, but to keep for herself. "To the woman I used to be, thank you for surviving. You didn't deserve what happened, but you turned pain into power. And that's something no one can ever take from you." The camera would show her walking out of the cafe into the evening light, her face calm, her eyes bright with quiet strength. As she walked, the narration would continue. "Sometimes, life burns everything to the ground, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you stronger. I lost everything once: money, trust, love. But in that emptiness, I found myself, and she was enough." The music swells, gentle but powerful. The final image: Emily standing by the water, wind brushing through her hair, her reflection steady in the calm surface. Not broken anymore, not waiting for anyone, just whole. They say time heals all wounds, but Emily learned that time alone doesn't heal. You have to dot it. Had been almost a year since Robert left, a year since her world had crumbled, and yet, here she was, standing tall, not as the woman who was broken, but as the woman who rebuilt herself from the pieces. The camera would open on a soft, morning light streaming through her apartment window. The once empty walls were now alive, sketches, colors, and canvases everywhere. Emily stood in front of one, paintbrush in hand, wearing a simple white shirt stained with color. Her hair was tied loosely, her eyes calm. As she painted, her voice narrated softly. "Love used to mean giving everything I had, until I had nothing left for myself. Now, love means balance. It means peace." Her studio had become her sanctuary, a place of creation, not destruction. Every brushstroke was a memory being rewritten. Every shade of color was a reminder that life still had beauty, even after betrayal. She was painting a new wall that morning, pure white, the color of beginnings. Her brush glided smoothly, and with every stroke, she whispered to herself, "This is my clean slate." As she worked, her mind drifted not in pain, but in reflection. Images flickered like a gentle montage: her wedding day laughter that once hid uncertainty, the nights she cried in the dark, begging for love, and then, the day she stood up, packed her things, and walked away. Each memory no longer haunted her. They had turned into quiet lessons. "He married me for money," she said softly in the voiceover, "but I found something far more precious: myself." Later that day, Emily met a new client at her studio, a woman named Hannah. She was young, nervous, her voice shaking as she spoke about redesigning her home after a divorce. Something in her tone, the trembling between words, the forced smile, felt achingly familiar. When Hannah's eyes began to well up, she whispered, "I don't even know who I am anymore." Emily smiled gently. "You will. It just takes time, and a little bit of courage." Hannah looked up at her, as if seeing hope for the first time in months, and in that moment, Emily realized she wasn't just rebuilding her own life, she was helping others rebuild theirs. As Hannah left, Emily stood by the window, watching her walk away into the sunlight. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, not a victim, not a survivor, but a woman at peace. The scene transitions, the sound of soft piano plays. Emily walks through a park filled with golden leaves, her scarf fluttering in the wind. Her narration continues. For so long, I believed love was sacrifice. But real love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself. It doesn't take away your peace to prove your loyalty. It holds your hand. It doesn't hold you down. Cut to a brief flashback, Robert's cold expression, his packed suitcase, the echo of the door closing. Then fade to Emily, smiling at the sky. And sometimes, losing someone is the universe's way of saving you. Her new life wasn't glamorous, no grand house, no luxury car, but it was real. Her days were filled with simple joys, morning walks, late-night painting, laughter shared with people who cared, and her nights, they were peaceful. No more pretending, no more tears for someone who never deserved them. The narrator's tone grows softer, warmer, like the closing pages of a diary. You see, pain changes you. It teaches you what you will no longer accept. It burns away everything fake and leaves behind the truth. Emily's truth was simple. She was enough. Without anyone's approval, without someone to validate her existence, she had learned to love herself. Not the perfect, smiling version, but the messy, healing, beautiful real one. The final montage unfolds, Emily watering her plants, laughing with friends, painting late into the night, a slow-motion shot of her walking through sunlight, hair dancing in the wind, eyes glowing with quiet confidence. Her final voiceover begins. The emotional message to the audience. If you're watching this, and your heart is breaking, please listen to me. I know how it feels to give everything to someone who only saw your worth in what you could offer. But you will rise, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. You will outgrow the person who hurt you, and one day, you'll look back and thank the version of yourself who refused to give up. She pauses a breath. The piano fades to a gentle hum. He married me for money, but what he took from me, I replaced with strength. What he broke, I rebuilt. And what he abandoned, I learned to love again in myself. As the camera pans out, Emily walks down a quiet street lined with trees. The morning sun filters through the branches, painting everything golden. Children laugh in the distance, life moving around her, vibrant and alive. Her pace is steady, her posture proud. No tears, no regrets, just peace. The screen slowly fades to white as her final words echo. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. Because when you walk away from someone who never valued you, you walk straight into the arms of the person who always will, yourself. Soft music plays, a gentle violin and piano, as the final visuals show. Emily closing her studio door with a content smile, the sunlight hitting her face, her journal left open on the table. With the words written in neat handwriting, new beginnings aren't found, they're created. The screen fades to black. End credits roll in silence, leaving only the lingering echo of her calm, powerful voice. Asterisk.